1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. Tuesday edition live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. Hello and welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Royal Blue Podcast. It is the day after deadline day and we are here to dissect and discuss not only Everton's transfer business but the proceedings that unfolded last night with Crystal Palace's late bid for Dwight McNeil, only for it to collapse at the 11th hour. We'll also discuss Everton's loan signing of Tyrique George and what that means for future Everton starting lineups moving forward. We are live in the Royal Blue studio today. I am your host, Ian Croll, and alongside me is Connor O'Neill. Couldn't keep him away. He loves the drama of deadline day. Connor, how are we?
Yeah, another deadline day, done and dusted.
You sound really excited about it. Did you stay up for it?
Well, yeah, it was only till 7 and then 9 o'clock, wasn't it? So
well, if you put in one of those sheets...
It was only till 9 o'clock,
yeah.
By which point I was watching Sunderland versus Burnley. So... yeah, I was following, as obviously done, my day had finished by that point, and I was just following all the drama online as I watched Sunderland ease to a 3-0 victory over Burnley.
I didn't bother. I was in bed for about 9:15. I mean, I did see a tweet to say that it may have collapsed, the move, but nothing was confirmed, so I just thought, you know what, I'll read all about this in the morning. Nice little sleep, not worrying about whether Everton are going to sign anyone or let anyone go.
Well, it's a nice relaxed way to look at it, to do it, isn't it? You know,
I'll speak about it enough with you and everyone else on this show. So,
yeah.
All good anyway.
Yeah. It was pretty eventful, I think, wasn't it? In the end,
a bit of drama, I think.
You know, the way it played out, which I think, if we're being honest, at some points last week we were unsure if we were going to get that level of, activity from an Everton perspective. But yeah, there was an incoming, nearly an outgoing. Obviously, there was a couple of outgoings in terms of a couple of young kids, obviously, who've gone out on loan, gained some valuable first team EFL experience. But yeah, obviously, I think we'll get on to it, but the main talking point is obviously the Dwight McNeil's move to Crystal Palace. That didn't happen. Obviously, like last night when it had come out that it wasn't happening, even though he was undergoing a medical, I think, by that point, and it looked like everything was in order. Obviously, the deal sheet had been put in to give them an extra 2 hours, and then obviously the final kind of stages, last minute, the deal was collapsed, and McNeil is now still an Everton player, which
we are going to come on to. In terms of the Tyreek George loan deal, Connor, do you think Everton used a secure VPN when they were transferring any bank details over to Chelsea to secure that loan deal?
You'd like to hope so, wouldn't you?
What VPN do you think they would have used?
Well, hope it's Nord, isn't it? To stay safe, stay secure, and make sure that, there could be no eyes that shouldn't be looking at that sort of information who could get their eyes on it.
Well, bearing that in mind then, to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/EFC. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And the link is in the podcast episode description box. Do you like that little segue?
Yeah, it was very good.
I'll try and incorporate a few more of those into the podcast to make it more entertaining. Not just for us, but for the audience as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they were absolutely delighted to by that little segue.
Okay.
That's what they came for.
That's exactly. They came for Nord. They didn't come for me or you. Or any of the Everton news, just Nord alone. Yeah. Right, we'll talk about Dwight McNeil because that is the main story. I mean, Everton signed the player. That should be the main story, shouldn't it, really? But obviously with the way things went. So, for context, Dwight McNeil's proposed move to Crystal Palace collapsed in the final minutes of the transfer window. The 26-year-old looks set to seal a last-minute deal that would have taken him to Selhurst Park initially on loan, and the agreement would have included an obligation for Crystal Palace to make the switch permanent in the summer for a fee of around £20 million. Palace's late bid for the winger set in motion a race against time that led to Palace submitting a deal sheet as the move advanced beyond the soft deadline of 7 p.m. late on Monday night. However, the additional 2 hours that afforded the clubs was not enough for the move to be concluded, and the result is that McNeil will stay on Merseyside despite looking set to spend the rest of the campaign on the periphery of the Everton team. I mean, Connor, it's understood that everything was completed from an Everton point of view, paperwork, all that sort of stuff, and the collapse that, has been reportedly emerged from Crystal Palace's end. What did you make of that, the whole saga, I guess?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's an absolute hammer blow, isn't it, for Dwight McNeil, because, regardless of what people think of Dwight McNeil and his performances for Everton, like the rest of us, he's a human being, and obviously we've probably been informed quite late yesterday that a move to Crystal Palace was on. It's not exactly up the road. It's not like when he come to Everton from Burnley. So obviously, you got to get yourself to London to, suspect to or start planning for life in London, haven't you, essentially? It looked like it was on. The 2 hours, it looked like it was on. You're going to give them enough time. Obviously, it's not happened, and yeah, it's not a great position for him to be in. And for Everton, you can understand why probably Everton executives this morning are sitting here quite angry, because not only have they kind of been messed around themselves in the sense of, they've agreed a deal, but, they've lost out on what could have been £20 million in the summer, couldn't they? Which they were essentially getting back what they paid for him when he moved from Burnley to Everton. So, the double whammy here of, Everton's executive have every right to be angry with that, with how this played out, because it's not a great look for Crystal Palace whatsoever. But I think, like I say, the immediate thoughts are, you've got to feel for Dwight McNeil, because, one can only imagine what that poor lad was thinking and feeling as he sat, last night, ultimately waiting for the green light for the deal to be done, only for it not to be done. And he remains an Everton player right now. And will remain an Everton player, you suspect, until the end of the season.
From an Everton point of view, let's look at solely from the club's point of view. Palace kind of came in last minute. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I think maybe if anyone was going to put a bid in for McNeil to be Forest.
Forest have been heavily linked, haven't they, throughout the month of January.
Palace come in, initial bid rejected, and then they do up it to 20 million. How frustrating is it for you, from a club point of view, that we were going to get 20 million for a player who was probably surplus to requirements anyway? I mean, I think we paid 60 million for him, all those years ago. 20 million, £4 million profit, roughly, if that's what the fee was in the region for. It's a blow. I think it's a blow from a club point of view as well. And Dwight McNeil's been a great servant for Everton in tough times. He's been one of the better players. Obviously not the case now, but I always think Everton don't sell players great. We always either let players go on a free, or we just let them go too cheaply. This transfer could have been the difference maker, and Everton are going to play hardball in the transfer window now, and massive blow.
It felt like a great deal, didn't it, for all parties concerned, in the sense of, Everton are going to get 20 million for a player, like you say, has kind of played second fiddle this season to Jack Grealish, Shillerman and Dye. There's obviously, he's probably fallen out of favour a little bit with David Moyes. I think it's safe to say times this season. Obviously he's come under criticism for some of his performances and displays, but he's largely found himself on the fringes. So to get 20 million for a player who's probably not been a first team regular is good business. And then obviously McNeil himself probably looked at it and thought, I probably need a fresh start, go somewhere else, get myself a bit of game time, become a first team regular, build up his confidence, get back playing on a regular basis. And he's probably thought, this might be the fresh start that I need to kind of, get me career back on track a little bit, having, been forced to play second fiddle for much of the season at Everton. So for all parties, it's an absolute kind of hammer blow, because, like I say, you've got, £20 million that Everton have probably missed out on. Like you say, it's a great deal in terms of, for a player who's found himself on the fringes. And for McNeil himself, it's probably the chance for him to not relaunch his career, but, get back to playing on a regular basis, become a first team regular, cement his place in a starting lineup. And he probably looked at Palace and thought, well, no, I've got the opportunity to. Palace obviously still, fighting in Europe and stuff like that. You had that added, bonuses. There's extra bonuses of that.
No wonder he was desperate to go.
So, you've got all that, and obviously, as we sit here today, right now, Dwight McNeil remains an Everton player. The deal didn't happen. And, obviously you go from there. But yeah, I think for both parties, it's a hammer blow because, the money and the type of investment would have been much, welcomed. I think at Everton, the fee that they would have got for him. And for McNeil, it probably would have handed them the chance to go and play, regular first team football, new environment. And he's obviously been denied that opportunity.
Based on the outlook now, obviously it's very raw. I think his contract is up at the end of next season, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got.
So I think you'd obviously have to say, again, based on the outlook now, that the writing's probably on the wall for Dwight McNeil's maybe not immediate future now, but obviously moving on to the summer, but probably never going to get 20 million for him, no matter who comes in for him in the summer, are we?
We don't know. I mean, you never know, do you, in football? You would probably never have thought that Wolves would get over 40 million for Strand Larsen, would you? After they rejected Newcastle's approaches in the summer, and they managed to get Palace to pay that for him yesterday. So you never quite know in football what's on the table and what's not going to be on the table. At the time, obviously yesterday, it's still quite raw. It just felt like a good deal, didn't it, for all parties concerned? Like I say, Everton recoup, probably what they've paid out for McNeil since he come from Burnley. McNeil gets the chance to start afresh and, go to a different environment and a new team. And yeah, for it to not happen, and the way for it to not happen, I think, as well, is what makes it even worse, because this wasn't like he's failed his medical or anything like that. Quite clearly, Palace have pulled the plug. We don't know why Palace have pulled the plug, but they have obviously clearly pulled the plug. Whether they ran out of time to get the paperwork done, we don't know. But yeah, it's not a great look for them, and it's not been a great couple of probably a great 24 hours for Dwight McNeil, because he's probably gone through a whole range of emotions and that ultimately, at the end of the day, all them hours on now, he still finds himself as an Everton player.
Simon Cool Hand in the comments has got a bit of a conspiracy theory. He says, hearing that Crystal Palace weren't answering the phone to either the team or McNeil, is there a chance that the whole thing was just to stop Forest and Dyche from getting their hands off McNeil?
Well, probably not, given I don't think Forest ever made a proper bid. They might have been quiet for him, but never made a proper bid. So that's a lot to do if you're going to, go all that way. I don't think that is the case. I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if that was the case. I do wonder a little bit, and this is just me, thinking out loud here, whether Mateta's move to AC Milan collapse and played a part. Obviously, it looked like he was going to move for, quite a big sum of money to the San Siro, but that didn't quite happen in the end. Obviously, he actually failed his medical, didn't he? Essentially, AC flagged issues from his medical. So maybe that played a part, but I don't think that Forest played a part, because why would Palace clearly inquire, make a bid that gets rejected, then come back with a bid that they know Everton are probably likely to accept? Why would you do all that if that seems bizarre, to say the least?
I mean, McNeil is going to stay an Everton player for at least till the end of the season. Where does that leave him now in the thinking of David Moyes, you think? Because obviously Moyes has used him. He's preferred McNeil over Diblin on the right, and certainly in the away games. I mean, hang on, what anyone thinks, he's had some sort of an impact. There's no question about that. Obviously, he's probably not up to the standard that we want. But Moyes has again chosen him over Diblin. But Leeds obviously was really poor, wasn't he? And he was hooked, and it was a poor performance. So, other than just adding squad depth now alongside Tyreque George and Diblin, does he fit into the team? Does he fit into David Moyes' reckoning?
Yeah, I think he still does. I think he's still an option. We've seen David Moyes has often turned to him before he's turned to Tyler Diblin this season. So there's no reason why that might not change now. Dwight McNeil can play himself back into contention. It's as simple as that. If he comes on, if he's given an opportunity and he takes his chance, he can play himself back into contention. There's no David Moyes isn't I don't think a stubborn enough man to not playing because he nearly went to, Crystal Palace, and Moyes has regularly turned to him throughout the season, so I don't think that's going to change. Everton probably just got presented with an opportunity that they thought was too good to turn down by Crystal Palace. That's football. That's how it works. That's whether you're a first team regular, a fringe player, or someone who's not in the thinking. We've seen this in football time and time again, not just at Everton. If the right offer comes in for a club, for a player, anything is possible. Whether that be your number 9 centre forward, who you might get offered 100 million for, you could turn around and go, well, that's just far too good for us to turn down. Likewise, if you've got a player who's been on the fringes, behind other players in the pecking order, if you get an offer that you think that makes sense, that's good business. The deal's probably going to happen, and that's exactly what's happened here. I don't think this will change David Moyes' thinking around Dwight McNeil. I still think we could see, for all we know, we could see Dwight McNeil come off the bench for Everton on Saturday at Craven Cottage against Fulham. There's nothing to stop that. All it takes is a couple of injuries, a suspension or two, which we've seen this season. It was only back in December that all of a sudden the squad Everton had went threadbare, and people like McNeil were given an opportunity to stake a place, and he done well in some games, didn't do so well in others. I don't think this is the end of Dwight McNeil. I don't think all of a sudden he's just going to sit in the stands for the next 6 months, or I don't think that is the case at all. Everton were presented with an offer by Crystal Palace that probably made good football business sense. They looked to move McNeil on. It didn't happen. He's now an Everton player, and I think he'll probably play a part between now and the end of the season. What happens in the summer, we don't know. But as things stand right now, I think he'll be still a member of David Moyes' squad. He'll still be someone David Moyes turns to, and he's got as much chance as other people in that squad of staking a claim.
I've got no problem with McNeil playing, if I'm being totally honest. I think, would he be my first choice for a winger for Everton in the starting lineup in the coming weeks if we've got an Ilman and Tyler Dibblin, Tyrique George, who I've got to confess haven't seen much of. Obviously Moyes tried Harrison Armstrong out on the right against Brighton as well. Like I say, I've got no problem with him playing, but he's got to show more, and he's got to improve. Hang on. He's got to show more, and he's got to improve at what he did against Leeds. It wasn't. This is forget anything that has been spoken about Dwight McNeil with any personal issues that he's got. I'm talking about football issues here. That was a shocking performance against Leeds, and everyone knew it, and David Moyes knew it. Hence why he took him off. So for footballing terms, he has to improve. But I will reiterate, he can't play on the right wing. He's only being hamstrung. If you're going to play him on the left, and if you don't want to play him on the left, at least try him in the middle, because he just drifts out into the middle anyway. So at least give him the opportunity to succeed rather than fail.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think the right-hand side experiment is something that clearly just isn't going to work, and it's not going to happen. On the back of, he was obviously hooked against Leeds at half-time. He was poor, but he's not the only person who's been hooked at half-time this season, has he? The number 9, who everyone... he's not number 9, he's number 11 at the minute, isn't he? I think, but the centre forward, everyone is, becoming more and more impressed because of his... He's obviously found the back of the net a couple more times in Tierney Barry. He was hooked a couple of times so far this season because of his performances.
Everyone has.
Tyler Diblin's been hooked at half-time for his performances. And if we're being honest, I actually thought McNeil, as bad as he was against Leeds, was not Everton's worst player. Because there was someone behind him. Someone who would have been behind him if he was on the left, who I thought had an absolute stinker of a night in Mikalenko. I thought he really struggled. And I think if we're being brutally honest, if David Moyes had any chance of a left-back cover, he'd have been taking Mikalenko off at half-time, because he would have been not, because he was just as poor, if not poorer at times. So yeah, that is, you are right, that being hooked at half-time is a bit of a wake-up call for him. Like I say, he's not the only one who's been hooked at half-time this season, is he? Harrison Armstrong was hooked at half-time against Leeds United, wasn't he? But he got back in the fold against Brighton. Someone Everton want to keep him. So I think, look, I get the element of the surprise around the decision. I get the element of people being frustrated with McNeil, but I do agree with you. I don't think him playing on the right is doing him any favours. And I think it's an experiment that we tried, and I understand why we tried it, because obviously, you're looking for different solutions to different problems, but just not worked. And I don't think it's going to work. So I think moving forward, if he is going to play, he needs to play on the left-hand side.
Comments from Kevin Kraft says Dwight McNeil's transfer deadline day collapse is purely down to Crystal Palace. Dwight McNeil needs support from Moyes' teammates and fans. Disgraceful shenanigans by Crystal Palace. I mean, I'll touch on this briefly, Connor. His girlfriend released a statement on Instagram. His girlfriend, Megan Sharpley, and basically, I won't go into it, I won't read it fully, but she basically called out the football industry and specifically the treatment of McNeil through this move, which has left her heartbroken. She used the words such as hardship, sacrifice, and stating that Dwight had been going through some personal issues. So obviously a very emotional day for Dwight and his family. What I would say in this, and we'll move on now to probably more positive topic of Everton bringing a young winger in Tyrique George, but he's an Everton player as it stands. So he's been a good servant through the club through rough times. We just need to get behind him and support him. As like you said, there's every chance that he could either start on Saturday or at least come on.
But above all, Harry, he's a human being, and everyone.
No, obviously I'm talking about the football.
Oh no, but I've read. I actually saw the statement when I woke up this morning, or the post, sorry, on Instagram from his partner. And I have to.
You write an article on it.
Yeah, and I have to say, it was eye-opening because, there's a perception of footballers, isn't there? There's a bubble that, they live in this great big bubble and, they're well paid and it's almost like that is acceptable, that people can say what they want and do what they want because they're well paid and, you've got to suck up every bit of criticism that comes their way because they're well paid, or, if fans want to tell you how you feel, you've got to accept that because they're well paid. And yes, they are well paid, but, above all else, footballers are human beings. They have feelings, they have emotions, Like I said earlier on, you do wonder what McNeil, the whirlwind of emotions that he probably went through yesterday, from being told the move to Crystal Palace was on, the fact that, you're packing up your life and moving from wherever he lives in the northwest to London, waiting for the call to come to sign on the dotted line, reading between the lines that call never come and he was just left in the dark and things just fizzled out. And that's no way to treat anyone in life, let alone just because he's a footballer. That's no way to treat anyone in life, and it's really poor. And I hope Crystal Palace come out and address what happened yesterday, because I think they really need to. They really need to tell people what happened, because what we've read so far, their actions just are not acceptable. And I've actually been quite fortunate. I think I am. I actually interviewed Dwight McNeil and Megan a couple of years ago together. Okay. At Everton in the community events, they bought some toys for children, for kids who are struggling, and it was enlightening, to be fair, because McNeil is obviously a very, I think we say reserved character. He's not flashy. He's not, I think he keeps himself to himself is the best way to describe him. But, they were both really engaging, and it was really fascinating actually to talk to his partner, because she's obviously been with him since the days at Burnley. They got while they were at Burnley, and, talking about how the transfer to Everton occurred and what happens there and what it's like as a, as a partner or a girlfriend to watch your other half pick a club away. He wants to go. So obviously, McNeil had multiple options when he come to Everton. So it was really engaging. It was really enlightening, and she will have obviously felt it yesterday, which is understandable. And you just hope now that things change for the better in the football industry, and people aren't treated like that. I mean, it's easy to say, but I think we sometimes do forget that they're human beings who've got feelings and emotions just like the rest of us, and that should never be forgotten.
Yep, well said. Just some comments just to finish off on this topic before we move on to Tyreek George. So Richie, No Limits, says, McNeil was one of our biggest goal threats at one point. He's got a decent strike on him, and shame he isn't doing well. And the Pies, 1878, have said, it sounds like Everton acted with class over McNeil's move. That should be applauded.
And that class has got to continue, like you say there. Everyone's got to get behind him now, support him. He's wearing an Everton shirt, and that's the way it should be.
And I think he will. If he puts on that royal blue jersey, I think he will. I think Tony said this the other day in one of the pods. Everton fans will forgive if you're lacking in that quality, but they won't for hard work or shaking out the challenges. And that's what, not just Dwight McNeil, by the way, everyone has got to show. Okay, let's move on to some positive news. Tyrique George, Everton. I've completed the loan signing of Tyreek George from Chelsea for the remainder of the season, with an option to make the move permanent in the summer. George, who was capable of playing across the attacking line, joined the Blues on the final day of the transfer window and will be eligible to make his debut at Fulham on Saturday. Obviously, Connery spoke to Everton TV once that move was completed, so I'll just read out some of the quotes. He said, "I'm really excited to be here and to enjoy this massive club. I just can't wait to get started. The fans here are exceptional. I know Evertonians are really passionate. They like hard work," which we've just said, "and that's what I'm going to show. I want to be exciting and I want to impress." Like I say, I confessed I don't know too much about this guy. I've never seen much of him play. Obviously, he's young. He's a winger. Whether he's a direct replacement in terms of for Jack Grealish, obviously kind of like filling that void, I don't know. But is this all part of the master plan from David Moyes and the recruitment team? Or is this just
that remains to be seen, isn't it?
Is it just an opportunity that they thought will strike?
It's an opportunity, isn't it? And I think that was kind of the buzzword of the January transfer window, wasn't it? Well, January / early February transfer window, because obviously closed in February yesterday. It was opportunity, wasn't it? I think a lot of managers spoke about if opportunities arise. David Moyes and Everton's recruitment team clearly see this as an opportunity, and you've got to back their judgment call and back their. I think people will be happy to see an attacking player come in, because I think there's obviously been a bit of an outcry for a bit more attacking options to come in. But in terms of whether it's a direct replacement for Jack Grealish, we don't know. You do suspect, though, that I think David Moyes may have looked a little bit more closely at who was available after Jack Grealish's injury was confirmed. And obviously once it was confirmed, he's probably not going to play for Everton again this season. Because I think, reading between the lines, well, he essentially said that in the press conference on Friday, that they don't really think they'll probably see him again this season, which I don't think we will. Just because by the time obviously he gets back fit, will be towards the end of the season. So obviously that probably makes us change the outlook a little bit. But it remains to be seen what Tyrique George can offer Everton moving forward. He said all the right things, but it's on him now to back it up on the pitch.
And will he be given an opportunity? I mean, I know there's this big debate.
I think he will.
There's a bit of a debate, isn't there, whether Moyes is able to progress or bring through young players. Obviously, this is a different situation because he came through Chelsea's academy and now we've got him on loan. My argument is that because it's only an option to buy, it's effectively a trial for him to see whether he likes the club and whether we.
But is that the worst thing, though?
No, what I'm saying is he's going to have to make some sort of
he's
impact.
Going to make an impression, but that's not the worst thing, though, is it? That's not like.
What's not the worst thing?
The fact that there's an option. It's an option to buy, not an obligation.
The option to buy is better, yeah.
Yeah, because he's got to come in and make an impact. He's got to come in and make the positive. And I'm talking, because this is the thing with David Moyes, isn't it? There's a lot more to David Moyes, I think, in terms of how he recruits players than just what he might see on a football pitch that's obviously a big thing, but he's always spoken in the past, hasn't he, about like he checks on what type of character they are, what type of person they're signing, how they train. I think it was quite interesting, wasn't it? Was it early on in this season where he kind of referenced why Diblin wasn't getting a look of he's got to do more on training was kind of the message. So he clearly pays close attention to who's working hard in training and who isn't. So yeah, I think I think it's on George to make the impact, make the right impression that presents Everton with an opportunity with the things to go out there and buy him. I
think my point is just that he's not going to make an impact sitting on the bench, and if he's just given, if the game's in the balance, it doesn't matter what game it is, and it's a 1-1, and he brings him on. If Moyes brings him on to make an impact, that's throwing someone in, at the deep end, really. And he's done that loads of times with Tyler Diblin. For me, there doesn't seem to be a clear plan of when Tyler Diblin comes on. It's just literally go out there and try your best. So we don't know. It's pure speculation how Tyreek's going to be used. But like I say, he's going to have to get sufficient amount of minutes to make this impact. And when you think about it, there's not much of the season left.
No, there's not. And obviously Everton only in one competition, which is the Premier League, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be a period where I think it's like 2 weeks without a game. So they'll obviously get to see him more in training, see what he's about. But you make your impact really on the football pitch, don't you?
Yeah. And, he hasn't got a lot of time to do that. But that comes with pressure playing in the Premier League, doesn't it? And just find why Everton should buy it. So he's got to hit the ground running. He's got to come in. But like you say, it goes hand in hand. He's got to be given the game time to show what he can do.
Just some more comments from him. Connor, he says...
The only thing I do think is that Moyes if Moyes didn't believe he could play, I don't think he'd bring him in. No, you could put him straight in. I mean, you'd
only have to go off what Moyes said the other week in his press conference. He has final say on transfers. Anything else is just speculation.
No, but I don't think he's brought him in just like, maybe give him the odd game here and there and see how he does. I think he was only going to bring people in who were going to play in January who could come in and play straight away. Yeah.
Well, let's hope you're right.
He was never going to play. Don't get me wrong. That's not saying that he's going to start on Saturday at Fulham, because he might not. He might start the next Tuesday against Bournemouth. But I don't think David Moyes is going to bring anyone in this month just to gap fill and squad fill. I think he's only going to make players in who can make an impact. I think that's why he's kept Harrison Armstrong, because I think he looks at Harrison Armstrong and thinks you can make an impact. I think if he just thought we're just going to have to carry Armstrong for a couple of months, I think he'd have sent him back to Preston, being honest, because I think he'd have thought it's actually going to do anything for your development doing that. You're actually better off going back to Preston where you're going to play every week. I think he looks at Armstrong now in a totally different light of, you're an option for me to turn to, you're an option to start if needed. And I think that's why it's the same with George. I don't think anyone's been brought in just to make up the numbers. That is essentially what I mean.
Well, we'll see what happens. Just briefly there, he mentioned in some of his comments, David Moyes, he referenced him. So he says, the gaffer David Moyes was another reason I wanted to join. He's an amazing manager who has coached so many players like Wayne Rooney and players like that. I've had a brief conversation with him and he's an amazing person. I just want to enjoy it and learn under him and improve. Do you think, as fans, because we're so used to David Moyes just in general because of the longevity that he's had at the club under two different spells, do you think we do him a disservice at times, in the sense that as a manager, like we say, he's unable to attract certain quality players? And I know obviously Tyreek is young. He's it's not like he's a player in his prime and he's willing to come to Everton, but in that sense, do we do Moyes a bit of a disservice? Over the years,
Moyes gets a lot of disservice.
But what I mean is, we've always managed to. This is what the arguments of what type of manager David Moyes is. He's always usually brought players in who were like 22, 23, and then he's gone on to make them better. When was the last time David Moyes ever brought or bought a player in, focus on Everton rather than like West Ham, in his peak? And I know a lot of it comes down to money as well, wages and valuation.
Certainly from his spare spell, because he didn't have any money to spend, did he?
Let me use. So Roberto Martinez managed to persuade Lukaku to come first of all on loan, and then obviously was a permanent transfer. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but that was just because the market opportunity at the time, wasn't it? Like Lukaku'd also been at West Brom this season. I've been on loan at West Brom, hadn't he? So
you could argue Lukaku maybe wasn't even in his prime for Martinez. I'm arguing against myself.
He was still raw, wasn't he?
I'm arguing against myself a little bit, but I don't know. Like, there's a lot of factors with regards to when you bring in a player.
I think the first spell is really difficult to analyse, because I think the biggest problem is he didn't have a lot of money, did he? So you could never judge him on like one thing I will say about David Moyes though, from that first spell, was he was incredibly good at identifying players to go and sign. We just didn't have the checkbook. You think of Edin Dzeko, Negredo. I think he watched Modric. They were interested in Kyle Walker. When he was at Sheffield United, there's a lot of players that he identified who were good players, went on to have great careers. And you think of Edin Dzeko or Alvaro Negredo from Everton. That would have been a massive difference, wouldn't it? An actual number 9. But at that point, at that time, they'd often get outbid by Man City, by Tottenham. Because they had bigger bank balances, bigger checks that they could write. I think obviously in recent years at West Ham, I think again West Ham's tough to analyse, because they obviously brought in a sporting director who I think kind of had a lot of say. Moyes maybe didn't have as much say as what he wanted to. But I just think there's a general disservice towards Moyes in general. I think people, I think people are always so quick to criticise David Moyes on a lot of things and scrutinise him, and yeah, he's not perfect, but what manager is? Arne Slot won the league last year. you speak to Liverpool fans now, they've got major issues with Slot, and there's major flaws to his approach and how Liverpool play. And I've people in this office alone who watch Liverpool and go and follow Liverpool, and they often comment how boring Liverpool become to watch. So no one's perfect. Pep Guardiola has got an open checkbook. City still threw away 2-0 leads at Tottenham on Sunday. There's. I just think I think David Moyes needs to get back to that. He's obviously, this is always sounds a bit disrespectful, but get back to that thing of where he does take a few like gambles from the Championship, or like you said there, 23-year-olds who maybe have been at an Arsenal or Chelsea, quite haven't hit the heights, but then they drop down, and all of a sudden they just become better players through his guidance. I mean, Declan Rice obviously is obviously different ballgame, different playing altogether, but he speaks so openly, doesn't he, about how much Moyes has made him better and impacted him, and has helped get to where he is now and the levels that he's at now. So if you're a young player coming through and you're thinking, well, actually, I want to get to that level, there's probably no better players to go and play under than David Moyes, because he's got a tried and trusted record, and you've only got to look at how many players at Everton did he develop who went on to have very, very good careers higher up the pyramid and won win trophies. Julian Lescott is a prime example, isn't he?
In his first stint, there's loads.
Won the Premier League.
Baines, Arteta, P&R.
Yeah, Baines was just loyal, wasn't he? Stayed at Everton, but Arteta
Jagielka
went away and won trophies. So there's always that element. I think there's a lot of players who he can improve plays, and you see it this season.
Osman.
I think he's improved a lot of Everton's play, current plays. If we're being honest, from what we've seen in recent years, I think Jake O'Brien has been really good at centre back when he's had the opportunity to play there. Okay, there's a question about being full back, but he's a good centre back. But I think he's got better from when we saw him play centre back, a while ago. Tieno Barry's clearly got better from the start of the season. He's improved. And the thing when you speak to a lot of these players about their improvements, and I was quite fortunate to speak to Barry, like we touched on last week, after the Leeds game, and he referenced David Moyes a few times in terms of how he's helped him develop. So David Moyes is very obviously hands-on, has a big role to play in all this. So yeah, I think there's a lot that's said about David Moyes that I think is extremely harsh, and around recruitments, I think it always feels a little bit harsh, because yeah, there was a couple of players I haven't brought in this summer who maybe haven't quite hit the heights that some expected. But Tieno Barry's shown sign of promise. Kieran Dewsbury also been in the run to be Everton's best player this season. How good he's been, how influential he's been. Iliman Ndiaye, I think, has got better under David Moyes because he has more license to get forward and thrill. So he's already made. You forget he's only been back a year. And they done very little. They got Charlie Alcaraz in, didn't they, last January, towards the end of the window. Obviously, the summer was big in terms of turnover, in terms of players leaving, players coming in. So it's the foundations, I think, are getting better to be built on. Yeah, David Moyes isn't perfect, but I think you'd rather have him in charge of Everton than not in charge of Everton right this moment.
I know the answer to what my question is. When's David Moyes ever signed a peak player? Do you know what I'm going to say?
Go on.
Yakubu.
Yeah. Or Andy Johnson, probably.
Maybe Johnson, but obviously...
James Beattie, maybe.
I'm going with Yakubu.
Yeah, Yakubu was tried and tested, wasn't he?
And he had a successful first seaone,
yeah,
and then obviously tailed off. But what I mean is
suffered
Yakubu...
a terrible injury that probably derailed his career.
No, but he was like one of the top
Yeah.
goal scorers for like 2 or 3 years prior to that, wasn't he, in the Premier League? And obviously with Middlesbrough, Portsmouth as well, I think, did he go to as well? And we managed to persuade him to come to Everton. David Moyes managed to persuade him to come to Everton. So that's the right answer. That's my answer anyway. Yeah,
no, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think he was just unfortunate, wasn't he, Moyes? Because obviously Yakubu was really good and looked like he was going to become that centre forward. But obviously, was it his second season he'd done his Achilles at Tottenham?
I think it was his second season.
Second season he'd done his Achilles, did he?
He was never the same.
And he never recovered, did he? So of course, obviously, he was one of the injured players who missed the cup final at the end of that season, didn't he? And he
missed the penalty against Fiorentina to break all of our hearts.
Yeah,
the one player you think he's nailed on to score.
Yeah, but obviously Jagielka also missed that night, didn't he? But
yeah, but he made up for it with the United semi-final penalty. Didn't he?
That's true.
Kevin Kraft has given you a compliment, Connor, and says Connor O'Neill sees some intelligent stuff here. So first time for Everton, I guess.
Yeah, there is, yeah. It's not that sense I've said before, but you never know.
We're going to finish off now, but you've already mentioned Harrison Armstrong, so I won't go into detail, but just very quickly, is it the right decision to keep him, or should he have gone on loan?
I think if David Moyes sees him as a first team player, i.e. an option to start, certainly an option to come off the bench, it was the right decision to keep him.
Just not on the right-hand side.
No, but I think...
Again, he's
I think again, and I mean, this is, maybe a bit harsh, but I think we've seen more from Armstrong in recent weeks than we have Mail and Roll, haven't we? So,
but that's strange and crazy all at the same time, because he had a really good game against Villa, and then we haven't seen him since.
Yeah, but I mean, if you took probably from when Armstrong come back at the start of Jan to where we are now,
well, it's because
Armstrong's had more better games than Roll has, hasn't he?
Maybe, but obviously Kane and Gabriel coming back into the folds probably hasn't helped Roll either. Probably, I think.
Yeah, but I just think if David Moyes sees him as an option, and he's got to see him as a first team option, whether that be off the bench or whether that be
don't just shoehorn him into the team now like he did against Brighton.
Coming in, then yeah, it was the right decision to keep him. If he's going to if he ends up being a bit part player, then no, it wasn't the right decision, because he clearly would have walked straight back into that Preston team and played every week until the end of the season.
So I guess the answer is time will tell.
Yeah, that's probably me sitting on the bench. This fence that I'm giving.
Sitting on the bench, yeah. Sitting on the bench with Tyreek.
I've often sit on the bench. I sat on the bench, so it'll be nothing new.
Tyreek and Dwight on the bench and Connor. I guess a little keen eye on Arsenal v Chelsea tonight.
Massive ramifications, doesn't it? I mean,
Chelsea.
Who would have thought that Everton would have been watching a Carabao Cup second leg so closely, given that they weren't involved? But yeah, massive.
Well, yeah.
Is it 2 weeks? Two weeks, isn't it? Everton will play Chelsea.
For context, obviously Arsenal 3-2 up from the first leg. The Everton-Chelsea game is scheduled to be Saturday the 21st of March, 5:30pm kickoff. If Chelsea get through to the final, then they obviously play that Sunday, 22nd. So the game is going to be brought forward to Tuesday the 27th of February, which could be...
That's not a Tuesday, is it? The 27th?
Sorry, 17th. 17th.
The 27th is a Friday.
17th. Something going on for you that day? What?
It's my mum's birthday.
Oh, well, there you go then.
So I know. I always know when the 27th of February is.
In the mental diary there, isn't it?
Always know when the 27th of February is.
I had 17th written down, and I've said 27th.
One of the few dates of the year that I know when it is, because it is my mum's birthday, yeah.
Okay, well, keen eye on that. Hopefully Arsenal can do it, and we just keep that 5:30 kickoff. Don't want another midweek, do we? Or do you?
Not really. Just because then that means that literally we'd only have 3 home games left, wouldn't we?
Well, City's probably getting changed, Liverpool's probably getting changed, and then
Sunderland is already Sunday, no matter what, because it's the FA Cup final weekend, and the game won't clash on the Saturday.
I think we've had this conversation.
But the way Everton's season's gone, I mean, I think Arsenal will get through tonight, because I think Arsenal are a far superior team to Chelsea, especially given they're at home. But the way Everton's season's gone, and all these kind of midweek games and the Monday nights, you wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea do the unthinkable and get through.
If it happens, it is what it is. Not we can control.
The big worrying thing though with that is the gap, isn't it? If Everton don't play,
there's a big gap.
Well, if Everton end up having to play 2 weeks Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever the 17th is, when they would have played Chelsea, there's a massive, because it's internationals, isn't it? And I think it's FA Cup.
Yeah.
So there's like 3.5, 4 weeks. Thing is, but we wouldn't have a game. So
what are we going to speak about? What are we going to write about?
There'll be something, because there always is when it comes to Everton. But that's a long time, isn't it? Not to play a match.
Yeah, but when you say there'll be something, that means it's probably going to be a negative, because something bad's happened. So it's going to be injury or.
Don't say that.
No, I'm just saying that's what you're inferring.
Bad news, Croll over there.
I'm good news. I'm always positive.
But it's. Yeah, I mean, I just think for the sake of everyone, let's just hope that Arsenal do the business tonight, and a rare Saturday game stays on a Saturday, because we haven't had many Saturday games, have we? And I think this does affect atmosphere, and I think it does affect match going experience. Because I was talking to someone actually on Saturday about this, who's got a season ticket, goes every home game, and they pointed out, because we were actually talking about going for a pint after the match. And I said, "Oh, where have you been going?" And they said, "Oh, well, walking back into town, but I haven't been for one for weeks, because all our games have been midweek, and the only one that wasn't was a Sunday before everyone went back to work after Christmas." And it did get me thinking, like, it does play a part, doesn't it, in your matchday experience? Okay, Saturday 5:30 is not Saturday 3:00, but at least you can get up. You've got the day to kind of build into the game, and you can, you'll be out the ground by probably 7:30. So if you want to have couple of pints afterwards and chew the fat, you can do.
Yeah.
I do think it does impact your match going experience. And I think, you know, that there's that element to it of, you know, look, I'm not saying everyone needs to have 6 pints before the game and, you know, get tanked up or anything, but I think it does. I think it does.
5 will do. 5.
Yeah. I think it does. It does have it does have an impact, and it's only when he said that I actually was thinking, yeah, trust because it has taken like a lot of people probably have been. You know, last Saturday game was at 8:00, wasn't it? By the FA Cup. Last Saturday Premier League game home game was Arsenal Saturday before Christmas at 8:00. So, you know, it's a long time.
I think you're all right, and I agree with you.
Given that we won't have another one till the back end of February.
I think there is, with the amount of Monday night games and certainly other midweek games, there is a bit of a night game fatigue.
Yeah.
And, you know...
It's tougher, isn't it? Because you've been in work, you've got to get from work.
Yeah, and you can't stay out afterwards unless you, like you say, you know... Hardcore. I think the thing is with Goodison under the lights, it was always deemed to be like a special occasion, and you know those rare occasions where you might play a United, you might play a Liverpool, Arsenal, doesn't matter. You know, one of the big teams. Now I know you might get a Monday night game where it's a bit of a boring one or considered to be boring for the neutral. Obviously, we go and watch it no matter what because that's what we do. But I think from that point of view, like I say, it was a rarity, and who wants to watch? Like who wants to see Burnley Everton on a night? That's just a normal standard 3 p.m. kickoff.
Burnley Everton and Bournemouth though. What I will caveat that is that they are full midweek rounds.
No, but it's because Sky have got so much football. That's what it is.
It's not. That's not like that's being picked out. They are just part of full midweek rounds.
I know, but it's still included in it, isn't it? That should be just a bog standard 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff.
I do have a theory on this, and I was talking.
We're going off on a tangent here. You wanted to finish it at 30 minutes.
I know.
47 minutes.
But I do think the Saturday 3 p.m. is being edged out of football, isn't it? On the whole, you know, you look now. You know,
it's like say it's a bit of nighttime fatigue and maybe a little bit of football fatigue. There's so much football on the telly, and they're squeezing it in every time slot that they can. That's available.
And also, like going to match should be like about you go to match with your mate, or your mate or your family, and you meet up and you do this and you chew the fat before, chew the fat afterwards, and people are being denied that, aren't they, by all these midweek games.
I think it impacts. We'd probably know this more if it was still at Goodison, but impact like the pubs as well. People not staying out later. You know, if you were on a Saturday, like you say, you might stay out for like 5 or 6, like you might do, or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
I think you'll find I haven't drank for 5 weeks here. Thank you very much.
Well done. Same here. Okay, Connor, we will finish off today. Any final thoughts?
No, just a big weekend, isn't it? Another big weekend.
Just very quickly, how bothered were you that David Moyes used 4 centre-backs in
thought it was hilarious.
In a flat back 4.
Thought it was absolutely hilarious. Just laughed.
Peak Moyes.
More because I said it wouldn't happen last week, and it obviously did happen. Caveat though, Mikalenko was injured. So,
but he was forced into one.
He was forced into that.
Fair enough,
he was forced into the left back side of it. It wasn't like I'd have been more shocked if he'd have benched Mikalenko and done it, because I would have been like quite ruthless.
Yeah.
But his hands were somewhat tied, weren't they, by the fact that Mikalenko wasn't available for selection. And the only other option he's got is he puts Garner back there. But then you lose from around the midfield.
I think everyone was happy with Branthwaite there.
So,
and he's played there before, Branthwaite, he's done the job, and he did okay.
Yeah, so I was a little bit... I just laughed when I seen it to begin with. But yeah, I do think you've got to take it into isolation that his hands were forced a little bit by it. It wasn't... I'd been shocked, like I say, I'd been really shocked if Mikalenko was dropped and Branthwaite got stuck there, because that would have been like, oof, that's quite the call to make. But he was quite limited in what he can do.
Okay, we are going to finish there, and we are going to be back with more shows later in the week.
It's 4 shows this week, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we have got one tomorrow. I think Tony Scott and our sports editor Paul Wheelock are going to be on. Going to have to try and think of it out of the box topic, because I've got a little bit of a fatigue talking about transfer deadline day, and
there'll be something.
I've got one idea which I might be a little bit different, but Tony and Paul Wheelock are going to be in the studio tomorrow, hopefully. So keep an eye out, and if we go live, it's going to be 12 p.m. Okay, thank you for everyone who has joined the live stream, and thank you for everyone who's listened along on Apple and Spotify. Conor O'Neill has been in the studio with me, Ian Croll, and this has been your Royal Blue podcast.